I rise to speak to new Clause 1. The year was 1985. After a campaign lasting decades, 123 councils had answered the call of solidarity from the South African anti-apartheid movement and had adopted policies opposing that injustice, including 39 councils who had divested from companies operating in South Africa and Namibia. So while the Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, was calling the ANC and Nelson Mandela terrorists, and Young Conservatives were proudly wearing badges calling for him to be hanged, local authorities were on the right side of history, standing up to the horror of apartheid. But of course, the Conservative government couldn't tolerate this. So to weaken the anti-apartheid movement, a few years later, it brought in new laws making it illegal for local councils to boycott South African and Namibian goods. Madam Deputy Speaker, looking back, it's crystal clear who was on the right side of history and who was on the wrong side. But this amendment, in the name of the member for Newark, would ban local councils from taking such a stand. Were it in place back in 1985, because the Conservative government supported apartheid South Africa, let's not forget that, local councils, no matter the strength of local feeling and no matter the righteousness of the cause, would have been prevented from divesting pension funds from apartheid South Africa. They would have been compelled to be complicit in injustice. Members on the government benches might argue that it's history and things are very different now. The facts I contest say otherwise. This House knows that British-made weapons and diplomatic support are integral to the Saudi war in Yemen. Even as that war has claimed lives of more than 250,000 people, pushed more than 20 million into absolute destitution, and has resulted in grave violations of international law, British complicity continues. But this amendment, if it was passed, could deny councils the right to divest from armed companies whose bombs rain down on the people of Yemen. Similarly, if a local authority wanted to align their pension fund with international law and divest from companies operating in illegally occupied Palestinian lands, this amendment would risk denying them that right too. Also, with the rapidly accelerated threat of climate catastrophe and the need to consign the fossil fuel industry to the dustbin of history, at the worst possible moment, this amendment risks outlawing councils from standing up for climate justice, banning divestment of pension funds from companies that are setting our planet on fire. And Madam Deputy Speaker, the member laughs, but this is an actual threat. I'm not sure if you're a climate denialist, but you should really, look into that. And Madam Deputy Speaker, these are just some of the blatant affronts to local democracy and ethical investments. This amendment is so vague and so badly worded that it would have a chilling effect on public sector pension investments. It could be weaponised against any human rights campaign that raises concerns about pension investments in any company that is not formally on the UK's sanctions list. And as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch warn, it's so badly worded that in fear of committing an offence, pension scheme managers could be forced to break their fiduciary duties. Madam Deputy Speaker, in 1959, an anti-apartheid campaigner and Nobel Peace Prize winner called Albert Luthuli put out a call for global solidarity. In Britain, hundreds of thousands of campaigners responded, launching a boycott of South African goods, with people across the country doing what they could do to end this injustice. In my city in Coventry, the local Labour Party led the fight, distributing leaflets, holding public rallies, and even displaying a large poster in the city for a whole month. This was publicising the boycott and raising awareness about apartheid. And as so often in history, it's actions of local people, anti-racist campaigners, trade unionists and local councils who led the way, counteracted Westminster's complicity. These actions, while they were small in themselves, were part of a global anti-apartheid movement that was instrumental in bringing an end to this injustice. We should learn this lesson, and I strongly encourage members opposite to learn the lessons of history, that we should empower local councils to make democratic, ethical investment decisions, not to outlaw them, as this amendment does. I therefore encourage members opposite, especially a very enthusiastic member over there, to vote against this amendment. Thank you.